Hey everyone, welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 581 being recorded Wednesday, April 8th, 2020. I'm Jim Tanis.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
I'm Sebastian Peak.
And I'm Brett Van Sproenberg.
And we're so glad you could join us. We're sorry about last week. If you're looking at your podcast feed, no, it's not you. It's not an error. We did miss the last week's show, and it's all my fault. I'm so sorry. I had a last-minute issue come up, and we couldn't work around it. So we skipped last week, but we're here back again. And I know that I received at least one message due to the timing of last week's miss, because of also what we'll talk about first here, which is the unfortunate end of TWiCH This Week in Computer Hardware, the long-running TWiT Network show that started with our site's founder and first editor-in-chief, Ryan Shroud. It continued for about 3 episodes with Alan Malventano, and then, of course, has been taken over since then by Sebastian Peak. So there was...
And I drove it into the ground. Sorry, everybody.
Congrats.
Blame that Patrick guy. It's probably his problem.
Yeah, there was one constant through most of that show's history. I think it started with Colleen, but Patrick took over pretty early on, I think. But unfortunately...
Leo used to do it with Ryan back in the day, back in like 2008.
Yeah. But unfortunately, that
Josh
show...
did a few appearances.
Yeah, I think I was almost asked to do an appearance, but then they got wiser to it, and I think they had Robert Heron on instead that one week. This was right after I joined.
South Dakota?
A while back, didn't he?
Yeah. I think it was last November or something like that. Maybe it was earlier this year anyway. But yeah, he passed through Wyoming and told him a couple of places to eat.
Yeah, well, he's got the RV lifestyle going on, so...
Nice.
Yeah, I don't think he actually calls any particular state his home these days. He's in the Airstream somewhere in that... Who knows where he is, actually. He could be in Michigan right now, for all I know.
Well, he's not driving; he's traveling, folks. But we're sorry to see. Yeah, right. We're sorry to see that show, and it was unfortunate the way they handled it. We don't have any control over that. I know I received some questions about that as well, but it's pretty clear that that was a show wholly owned by TWiT, and they chose the timing and the manner of which to end it, which was basically just to end it, like no message as far as I saw, no final show. So that sucks. You know, for those of you who love Patrick, hopefully this will not be the end. He's done a lot of different projects in tech over the years, so hopefully we'll see something else going forward. And of course, he's always welcome to be a guest on here. We've made that offer to him. We can't afford to pay him as like a full-time contributor, but yeah, I'd love to have Patrick on whenever. And for those TWiCH fans, those Patrick fans, be on the lookout. But of course, you can always find Sebastian Peak right here at pcper.com.
Until we suffer the same fate. But hey, let's talk about something more uplifting, Jim.
Yes. So the news from last week, we would have talked about last week, and so now we're kind of out of date, but let's talk about it anyway, is, of course, AMD's long-awaited arrival of their Ryzen 4000 mobile processors. And the way that these things launched is in a specific notebook. I think it was the one that got reviewed by everyone who was lucky to get a review sample, and that was the Zephyrus. It's an Asus Zephyrus G14. It's a 14-inch notebook, and I can pull it up right here. And it's not expensive. This is AMD's top-of-the-line Ryzen 9 4900HS. This is their 8-core, 16-thread, 45-watt target TDP, although the 4900H is the 45-watt. This HS variant is targeted at a 35-watt base TDP. But in the example notebook here, this Zephyrus, you get this 14-inch notebook in a pretty nice design. And a lot of Asus's gaming notebooks are a little aggressive in their designs, turn some people off. But this is a pretty nice design, and it comes with the new RTX 2060 Max-Q, NVIDIA's new mobile GPU, which we'll be talking about a little later. A 1 terabyte SSD, which in this case is an Intel 660p, I believe. It's a really nice system, and it's $1,500, $1,450 list price. And as you'll see as we go through some of the reviews here, that when you look at the performance that this product provides against that base price, it's incredible, because the Intel-based systems that this thing is beating are at least 50% more in most cases, if not double in some of the configurations. But we did not get a review sample, unfortunately, and they're not available for sale just yet. They're up for pre-order. I think they're going to be landing in about a week. But there are a number of outlets that did get some samples. So let's take a look at some of the benchmarks. We can talk about, or we can look at TechSpot here first of all. Sebastian, I know you were kind of following this as it unfolded. What's the story here with this 4900HS?
Well, like you said, it's the 35-watt variant. We have not seen the 45-watt numbers yet. And I assume the big difference there is just going to be higher sustained clocks because it's the same chip. It's just hitting that lower power target because it's a smaller form factor device. This Zephyrus laptop. And I believe the Zephyrus laptop, correct me if I'm wrong, this has an RTX 2060 graphics card in it.
Yes, it's the 2060
Did
Max
have
Q.
discrete graphics. Okay.
Yeah.
So it just the performance. I was kind of surprised by a lot of the outlets going with like high end desktop and rendering, like our Cinebench, that sort of thing, which is kind of an unrealistic workload for a laptop. But I guess the results speak for themselves. If you're looking at any of these charts, where you're looking at multi-threaded performance, especially, it's just staggering, and it's either beating or going toe to toe with the highest end Intel mobile part currently available. We'll talk later about their announcement about the new 10th gen launch for mobile, but right now, like even a i9 9980HK cannot perform as well as this, depending on the workload. So just fantastic. The one bad thing about gaming benchmarks is, and I was looking at I don't know, one of the popular reviews for this from PC World, for example, they did a little bit of gaming. You're limited by that GPU. So they were positioning this against some of the other higher end laptops that would have a GPU like a 2070 or above. So, but just for CPU power alone, if you're talking about, like we're looking at some of these charts right now, just incredible performance on a par with a desktop system. This is an 8-core, 16-thread processor. And I don't know, do you guys feel free to chime in here? It's just,
Ding.
Obviously it's only one laptop, but
Ding.
It's hot stuff.
I'm chiming. Yeah, no, it's this is not exactly a second generation of the 3000 series, but you have to think that when they were designing this and they're really pushing out the desktop stuff, and this is 9 months later, that there was a little bit more tuning going on with this product than the original 3000 series that were released back in July. Yeah. And it's not going to be a huge amount, but it is going to be so much work on the mobile aspects, how do we boost this up to pretty good clocks for as long as we can without hammering thermals too much, and while still keeping base clocks at a reasonable place, and where we can do all full thread workloads without melting the entire machine. And it's amazing what TSMC 7 nanometer process has given AMD at this point, because Intel has a lot of really good technology and their process nodes are nothing to cough at, but it was they just have, AMD has such a leg up in terms of process technology that Intel just cannot match. And it's a perfect storm for AMD in that they've got now kind of the third generation, second generation of Zen, that, they went with chiplets on the desktop. And this, it is, an all-in-one. It's a single big chip with everything integrated in there. And they've done it all, maybe not perfectly, but really stinking good, because this is really a David and Goliath. This is where Intel makes a lot of their money. Mobile is still an area that is growth in the PC world, and the margins on these products usually are a little bit better than a lot of the average desktop stuff. So what AMD has done here, and what ASUS has done with the Zephyrus, it's really, really dang impressive, because it's an overall really well performing architecture, and in this case the laptops pretty stinking good. And at $1,500, you can take, your stimulus check and almost pay for one of these. So it's a winner all around. It's exceptionally good for AMD because they're going to get a lot more mobile action and sell a lot more of these chips, and eventually it's going to come to the desktop, and it's going to be another solid performer for where they do it. But they're going to get those high margin mobile parts on the market first before they start doing the integrated desktop that'll go anywhere from $100 to $150 at max.
I'm going to take a break here. We just need to pause. My wife just called me, and she knows I'm recording, so I'm concerned. So I'm just going to mute myself here, and if you guys want to chat while I'm on the phone.
Still, Jeremy, we should just say in the chat that Asus actually is using an AMD GPU because they kind of just. I think it's equipped with the one. I don't know if that HS actually has the Vega on the side or not. Whether it's just sort of sitting there. Kind of a little disappointing though that it's constantly equipped with an NVIDIA GPU. But I guess not to be surprised.
Yeah. You look at the desktop performance and power consumption on AMD parts versus NVIDIA, and you can see that, when they're looking at low power stuff, NVIDIA's really got an advantage there. Everything okay, Jim?
It was. She just got concerned because the alert said tornado warning. So.
Oh, sweet. A good thing you're in the attic.
Yeah, in the attic, so it's fine.
Yeah,
it's totally fine.
You're supposed to
Just
go to
open
the
all the
highest
windows in the house. The pressure differential won't kill you much.
I think it rhymes. It's seek the peak. I think that's what you need to do when
Exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome.
No, I just worry about AMD's timing because right now, I mean, honestly, the supply chain for a lot of components looks sort of like a bucket brigade. We've lost like so much of the just-in-time inventory we're used to, the ability to produce stuff, and for lack of one SIMD, it's held up. And it's also going to make some interesting calls as to what they're going to be releasing along with this, because like we were saying, NVIDIA is the better way to go with a mobile GPU. There's no question about it. We'll be talking about that a little bit later on in the show as well. But you're going to be looking at over the next 12 to 18 months, who's more likely to be able to supply me with a completed system? Is NVIDIA going to run into some issues that AMD isn't? Is AMD? So the companies are looking far out to see, this might actually end up being an opportunity for AMD to get some chips in there if they are, as they've been saying, TSMC has no issues going forward right now. Everything is going to be fine, and that could actually give them a bit of a bump up versus Intel, who's been having problems for forever, and NVIDIA, who, well, I mean, we haven't seen any shortages yet, but we haven't seen a new release either yet.
There's going to be a certain set of laptops, though, that the Vega GPU is actually going to be reasonable enough, especially when you compare it to the iGPU stuff that that Intel has been coming with for forever. The Vega part that they're putting on their the desktop G chips, but the mobile chips looks like it's actually going to be a reasonable performer for non-gaming applications, of course.
Did you guys talk about battery life when I was muted there?
No.
Okay.
No.
So I think we knew that this was going to be a good chip. We knew there were going to be big improvements over the Zen Plus based Ryzen 3000 mobile. I think the thing that shocked everybody, including Intel, was how good battery life is at low workloads. I mean, obviously, there were some tests that were done where you push the GPU and the CPU, you get down to a couple hours. But I mean, obviously, that's pretty common across the market. But here is a battery test from Hot Hardware, and this is in line with a lot of other outlets that tested. And you can see here there is at the very top there, almost 10 hours of battery life for a video loop, and some other tests like they ran the PC work. Brett, I think I'm getting a lot of audio in your background there.
Yeah, I'll mute that.
Okay. So this is a Hot Hardware video test. It's a loop test, and it's almost 10 hours, beating not just other 35, 45 watt TDP systems, but beating those 15 watt, the U series parts, which is just incredible. And it's just really a testament to the efficiency, as Josh was talking about, the advantages of this architecture. and how efficient you can be at lower usage. And like I said,
do you think anybody from AMD said, "Isn't this amazing?
yes,
Thank you, thank you, thank you."
Well, I don't know if he did any impressions, but Robert Halleck, of course, was very happy on Twitter to promote those numbers when the first reviews dropped. So people are looking at this thing, and that's the other thing too, is this is not this Zephyrus system. Let me see if I can get the pictures up again. It's not like an XPS 13 style, like razor thin, but it is not a bulky laptop. I mean, when you talk about high performance laptops, the laptops that, despite all other factors, lead those performance benchmarks. In the past, you're looking at those big custom gaming laptops, thick and loud and heavy. This thing is, again, it's not razor thin, but it's pretty thin and light, and it allows you to have full size ports.
It's kind of like in the original Ultrabook. I mean, those things were skinny, but this was the same kind of form factor, about size.
Yep. So you're talking about basically industry-leading performance in not all, but most tests, thin and light design, 10 hours of battery life. This is a dream system. And now I'm super excited to see what the U series is going to bring. And we'll be talking about the AMD U series as well, because those systems, the Zen Plus systems, as we've talked about, were good, and they were a big improvement over previous AMD offerings, but Intel was still, in most respects, ahead of AMD in that 15-watt category last year. So this year, if this same kind of improvement comes, that's going to be incredible.
Actually, I did want to ask a question, though. I was going to ask, and this could be equally asked a little bit later, and that's in regards to like a 35-watt part and a 45-watt part. Are those the same depending on whether you're on the red team or the blue team? I mean, when you label something 35 watts or 45 watts, and it's sort of like the battery life kind of tells the tale on that, is meaning, do they really mean that's, or is it just optimistic? And I was going to bring this up later about heat, but the battery life is a clear indicator as well. Everybody's 35 watt or 45 watt is not measured with the same yardstick.
Well, to an extent, in terms of like pure technical baseline, it's supposed to be. It's the
yes.
Yeah, it's the measurement at a non-stock standard, but everybody exceeds it. In fact, one of the problems that Intel's facing, and we'll talk about their mobile processors here in a bit,
right? Yeah,
is that they go way over. So that's
exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so their new highest end mobile part may beat the AMD part in a few benchmarks, but it's doing it at 3 times the power draw. And then of course that's also heat, and then that affects your battery life. And this is on the same on the desktop too.
Yeah.
I mean, desktop TDP has become meaningless, except merely to kind of categorize the different parts in the market, so you kind of know where you're starting from. But yeah, we'll
except for the FX 9570, with its 199
hotbox
watt TDP, which, honest to God, was pretty much on the nose.
Yeah,
they didn't lie.
I would miss the engineers telling us the model numbers and the heat stats and stuff, not the marketing team.
Yeah,
it's actually rare to even see TDP ratings for coolers anymore. There's a few that do.
Mm-hmm.
I know Be Quiet's one that does, but you don't just see a cooler and it will say right on the box, like, cools up to 180 watts or something, which and I borrowed actually from the old office one of the 9590s, which was a 220 watt TDP CPU from AMD that never hit its advertised clocks. If it did, it was for a microsecond because the thing was constantly throttling. Like if you were watching during a benchmark, the frequency would constantly like spike up to max and then drop and spike and drop just to try to thermally manage. But I don't know. I look at TDP as it's a thermal design. That's what it's supposed to be anyway. And I know that Intel has their own, scenario design power. I don't know if they're still using that. But TDP is really just what they're basing the thermal design on, like the actual cooling system. So yeah, power is probably going to be higher than that. I don't think they publish power limits. They certainly don't advertise them the same way. So you have to do a lot of hands-on testing, and you can't always even trust what the CPU is telling you. as far as how much power it's actually using. If you could trust everything that the software was telling you, it'd be a lot easier to review stuff, that's for sure. But, you know, the 35 watt version, obviously the big difference is going to be how it's implemented. This isn't like a desktop part where you could take a 65 watt desktop CPU like the Ryzen 7 3700X and just manually overclock it a little bit and suddenly turn it into a 95 watt 3800X. But with a laptop, it's being implemented in like a really thin form factor, even though that Zephyrus is not thin.
Mhm.
It's my definition of thin. I hate really thin and light laptops because the concession is always lower clock speeds. You don't get high performance out of it. And there's not enough room for a battery, and you don't have desktop style IO, but that's just like a side point. To me, these Ryzen laptops, partly because of the way they're being constructed, they're a more attractive option because they're considerably less expensive than a super high-end Intel machine, at least currently. So you're getting like incredibly high performance 8-core 16-thread CPU, but then you're also getting it in a slightly larger form factor that will have a bigger battery, that will have, at least will be more likely to have things like a full-size SD card reader and stuff that's actually useful to have on a laptop instead of carrying a bunch of dongles around and having 2 USB-C ports on the side of it. But
I like your optimism about the bigger battery.
I mean, there's room for one.
There is room for one, but it's like, we're going to ship this high-end part with a 65 watt-hour battery.
I mean, look how thin laptops are. This is like a pretty standard laptop. It'll focus here. And this is considered thick enough to actually have a full-size USB on one side of it. And I've talked about this laptop before. This is the Spectre 360. But you have to get into either the gaming category or mobile workstation to get into a form factor that we were used to just a few years ago. Like 10 years ago, laptops were twice this thick. When Steve Jobs walked out at whatever event it was and pulled the first MacBook Air out of an envelope, that was this amazing moment for the industry where all these copycat products started coming out, and it was a race to the thinnest laptop. And then manufacturers started releasing things like the thinnest edge versus the overall thickness of a laptop. And there were different ways of measuring laptop thickness, like the average between the thick and the thin half of it. And it's just kind of ridiculous because battery life took a huge drop and connectivity was impacted by this. And it's only getting worse because Apple's MacBook line is ultra thin with these Y series Intel parts that are, I mean, that was, it's
I don't need to cut my cake
but
with a laptop.
But you could.
Just give me your laptop with all the connections I want, a decent battery and some cooling. I don't care if it's 24 ounces or 36. Just give me what I want.
Now, in all fairness, they did make the 16 like 0.1 millimeters thicker. So,
oh, right, to accommodate the
Quiet
non-broken keyboard. Yes, that's true.
Yeah,
But Jim, you're aware of this product, right? There's a product you can buy for a MacBook that
I know exactly
sits
what you're going to
below
say.
it, and then you like sort of permanently dock it to it, and it just creates a thicker laptop. And people, love this thing because it adds things like full-size USB 3 ports and other things to the machine that otherwise
another hard drive.
wouldn't have anything.
Yeah, it's actually.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, a hardware Ethernet port. That's just, what kind of a fantasy world is this?
Wow, that takes me back to 2005.
This is the OWC DEC, DEC. Now, just to correct Sebastian there, I don't believe this ever actually went on sale. They announced it a couple years ago. I kept asking about it. I talked to their CEO at CES last year, and it's still, as far as I know, has not been made available for sale. But I was excited about this thing because if you're looking at the video version here, the MacBook Pro is just that top line, and then the thickness in the bottom, pretty much doubling or maybe even tripling the thickness, is this add-on that attaches through the screws on the bottom of the system and gives you an SD card reader, full-size USB ports, an Ethernet port. They were talking about allowing you to get inside and add 2.5-inch SSDs, options for additional batteries, and it all connects through Thunderbolt.
Optical drive?
No optical drive, but maybe they could have.
Good
Well,
fit.
it was the card reader that everybody
Sure
was
was.
really bent about. Well,
Well,
that was one
yeah.
of the things.
2015 was the last year that Apple made a laptop. Ever since then, they've made these
True.
sort of hinged portable devices that don't actually have any particular usefulness to somebody like me. But that's a
In
personal
the years
opinion.
past, I've bought two 2015 15 MacBook Pros just for that reason.
Yeah, those are great. They have a full-size STX-C reader and full-size USB
Yes.
ports, and even have HDMI, I believe. They have it all.
You can change the
Let
size
me ask one
of
thing.
the SSD.
Yeah, because we're so way out in the weeds. Do these laptops support PCIe 4.0, or are they all
No.
PCIe 3.0?
It's 3.
Yeah, AMD's platform is only
All
3.
three.
It's a power issue,
It is.
apparently.
And in
But
fact,
that
actually,
seems, kind of important coming up into
Yeah.
this new year when we're going to have better NVMe solutions probably coming out later this summer. But
Hopefully.
yeah, that's
don't know.
It's still not real power efficient, but dang, it's fast.
and
My
specifically
feeling on this. Go ahead, Jim.
specifically mentioning PCIe on this Zephyrus laptop we're talking about, that the Intel SSD in there is it's a by 2 3.0 port, which is adequate for the drive that they include because it's a QLC drive. But yeah, just keep in mind that's a restriction with that particular product. So hopefully we'll see more Ryzen 4000.
And I will say, to anybody listening who hasn't studied the specs, not a restriction on AMD's side, because their interface, at least off of the CPU, the total platform lanes is another matter, but the CPU itself is by 8 PCIe Gen 3 for the graphics. That's dedicated for any kind of discrete graphics product. And then you have a split of by 4 and by 4 for storage. So for your fast storage. So that does not, the platform itself does not limit you to a by 2 PCI Gen 3 connection for your SSD.
Yes.
It's just the way they've implemented this one. But like Jim said, I mean, it's such a nuanced thing. This is not, it's just a system integrator decision. And that's how laptops work. You don't just get to buy a bare platform. Well, I mean, they do exist. You can buy a platform and kind of build it up yourself, but this particular
when you're
one,
talking about a
only for
mobile
between-
card, and you're arguing between a 5-watt PCIe SSD and then jumping up to a 12 to 13 watt PCIe 4.0 unit. That's an area where they will look at it and they'll say, you know what, you don't need that kind of performance, but we can save some power and some battery.
Remember the good old days when you could buy the extra fans to brace to put underneath your laptop?
Oh, you can still buy
It was
those.
literally a
I think you
product
can
where
still
you
buy
bought
those.
it and-
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you need. And we'd have to bring back the warning about, yes, don't put it on your lap if you're male and you want children.
Or
Because that was a thing a while ago, too.
if you don't want children,
Unless you don't, in which case, do it.
Well,
Too late
maybe
now.
not right now.
too
Yeah.
late now.
Yeah.
plus
did
it
you guys
just
talk-
gets kind of sweaty and uncomfortable too. So I mean, that's
does.
really, it's more of a comfort thing, or
That's just like having
really
children, right?
a performance thing. If your laptop happens to draw air from the bottom, like this one does, then you can't really ever set it on your lap.
Yeah, I don't even want to talk about. So back in 1995, 96, they were shipping laptops with full-size Pentium 2 chips.
Oh, God.
Installed in there. And when you were running it, you not only had to have it plugged in, but they had stilts on the bottom that would lift up the laptops to keep the airflow going so that it wouldn't.
Yep.
And I knew all these med school students who bought these things because they were the literally hottest laptops around. Their battery life was like 10 minutes. It was terrible. But anyway, again, weeds. Let's get out of them.
Speaking of that, just real quick, there's a laptop, Clevo. So it's like a custom laptop. They put
yeah.
a 3950X in there.
Oh,
So
It's reasonable.
yeah,
Probably
Oh,
draws
yeah,
about the same amount of power as one of the new 10th gen CPUs. So
well, that
that's
was
fine.
their point. Was under certain conditions, the new 10th gen mobile is more power hungry than the desktop 3950X in
How
eco
big is that?
mode.
How big is that power brick? I'd like to see a picture of that.
I don't know. They didn't have any.
Picture
It's
may
gotta be
not be to
180
scale.
watts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But,
at least.
Just to finish up real quick here, did you guys mention gaming when I was muted earlier?
Very. No, I don't
Mm.
think so. I think I
Okay,
sort
so
of alluded to the fact that that particular one has the 2060, so the gaming is not really.
Yeah, we did. We talked about the graphics cards and the
Yep.
Vega potential.
So there are sites. Most of the sites did some form of gaming benchmark, but as we said, yeah, it's hard with laptops. It's always hard because it's rare that you'll find a laptop where everything is the same except the processor. So you can see and take it for what it's worth. A couple sites, as we do here for desktop, they tried to lower the resolution to try to remove the GPU bottleneck. And the point is, it's not the fastest, but it's very close. It's very good. It's more than adequate for gaming. And at most of the resolutions you're going to be playing at, it's going to be just as fast as any other 2060 Max-Q system as those become more available. So, very good news for gamers. You don't have to handicap gaming with this part just because it's so performant for productivity stuff.
And importantly, I will say one of the nice things about having the dedicated GPU like it has is that you can offload all of your video encoding onto that. So when you're doing your whichever team-oriented remote app like Zoom or Microsoft Teams, I think it's called, or what we're doing or anything that, like everything I do goes through the Camlink 4K. It's a Sony a6000 camera to the Camlink 4K. But then say I'm streaming, if I'm using OBS, I can set it to the NVIDIA encoder and it completely offloads that off of the CPU. So that's one of the sort of hidden features of having a card like that, is that suddenly streaming and other video conferencing type stuff gets a lot smoother if you have a camera that can take advantage of hardware encoding. I think the Logitech cameras do too, don't they, Jim? You can do
It works with
NVENC.
quick sync and NVENC.
Yeah.
And that's important too, because AMD's I haven't seen any updated tests with Navi, but traditionally the AMD video encoder the GPU based encoder is not as high of quality, noticeably so, as NVIDIA or Intel. So
that was something they addressed with the new architecture, but they went into that quite a bit when I went to the tech day way back at E3 last year.
Okay.
But yeah, it's NVIDIA's is pretty good. I've obviously been, I mean, since I started doing this, I've been using it, whether it's Skype or actually, I'm not even sure how VSync works if it's all CPU, but
it's also the Turing based, because it's generational on the NVIDIA side. So the Turing based NVENC is even better than
is a lot better. Yeah.
But let's move on to the next story, and we'll stick with the same theme though. We're talking about Ryzen 4000 mobile parts, but what we all talked about just now, as we talked about, was the 35/45 watt TDP, the higher end stuff. We also know that they're going to have a U series again. Last year they were exclusively U series parts, and they gave us a roadmap a while back. But it looks like, according to a DigiTimes report this week, that there might be a new mobile part at the top of that U series, just like there was with this 4900, because we didn't know about that right away. And of course, keeping in line, it's rumored to be that this would be the Ryzen 9 4900U. Which again, 15 watt, 8 cores, 16 threads, but higher clocks. And this is a Tom's Hardware report citing DigiTimes, and you can see how it slots in here compared to both the Ice Lake and upcoming Tiger Lake Intel parts and the existing, what we knew from the Ryzen U series here. So the base clock goes to wait, is this right? That's all backwards.
That looks wrong.
Yeah, that's. I think there's an error in that chart.
That's weird.
It's supposed to up the base and boost of the CPU, and then this chart is wrong. Sorry, but it's supposed to be faster, slightly faster, just like the 4900 was to the 4800 series. So there looks like there'll be even more options there in that 15 watt ultra thin and light category. But what do you guys think about that? I mean, I'm even more excited now for the U series than the H, because that's where a lot of margin is. Those portable lower price rather systems. The gaming laptops aren't really driving the market as much as people buying productivity machines. And if you can get a system like that has really good performance and much better battery life than the Intel counterpart, I mean, that would be game over this generation. I wouldn't see any reason outside of the few apps that are optimized for Intel. Any other thoughts on Ryzen mobile processors?
Yay.
Yay.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yay.
Yep. Keep an eye out. I can't wait to get
Competition.
one. We gotta buy them. Every time I call and I cry, they tell me they love me, but they still don't send me any review units.
That's just like me. And during this pandemic, NVIDIA's not sending me an RTX 2080 Ti, and I don't think they realize how much I need that.
Yes.
It's just like it. It is exactly like it. Mm-hmm.
Tell them you need it for the Turing encoder, the video encoder.
Yes.
You're going to
Think
join
about the quality
NVIDIA
stream
F1 virtual team.
Do they sponsor one? That would be great.
There you go.
Need to
Josh.
There
sharpen
should be
this.
more. There should be more sponsors for virtual racing.
There might be if this
Get a
social
Fox
distancing
Sports. Fox Sports.
Exactly.
Yeah,
They're doing the F1.
yeah. They picked it all up, but I think
No,
now,
they're doing NASCAR.
Yes,
They're picking the low hanging fruit first.
right.
Okay.
Incidentally,
Who's doing
just
F1
take
then?
this,
Because they saw that.
to take this tangent.
No, there's
Sorry,
another group that's doing F1 with Codemasters.
Okay.
FIA is doing, but it is not nearly as robust as what Fox Sports is doing with iRacing and NASCAR. I mean, it was kind of interesting because like 4 weeks ago when they had their first one, you had these NASCAR racers with, a Logitech G27 bolted onto their desk and they're playing on a laptop. And then fast forward 4 weeks later, they've all got these full motion simulator kits and seats and triple screen options with direct drive wheels that, it's a $20,000 setup that they quickly win. So, I mean, it seems like the money's there because the sponsors like Ally and Chevrolet for, I think, Jimmy Johnson, I mean, he had this very, very basic setup initially. And then this last one, I mean, he had this full motion sim racing thing with, it was the racing seat and it's got, Ally stitched on the wings of there and Chevrolet on the wheel and all this other stuff. And it's like, these guys are taking it seriously. And that's really cool. Oh.
Well, it's not like you got hundreds of $1,000s of repairs to do after every race.
Exactly.
So it's
Yeah.
nice.
That's a good point.
I got my
fatalities
poor
to sports.
my poor boy Momo is coming back, getting ready
Now-
for the dirt rally.
That I would hope that still has at least basic compatibility with modern games. That's the sad thing to me about like my
I don't know.
my old game controllers is
Do you
you
have a
pretty much have
serial
to
port?
upgrade.
It's USB.
Oh, okay.
Oh, hey, you know
Well, as
what?
long as
Actually,
it's not a
speaking
keyboard,
of
then you're good.
completely unrelated, I have this thing in for testing. We were talking about AMD stuff. This is one of the newest Leva boxes from ECS. If it'll focus. And one of the things about this is the AMD powered version. This takes Ryzen processors, has a 35 watt limit, which I'm going to test because it actually has a 90 watt power supply. So I'm going to try to sneak a 3400G in this thing. But it has a serial port. If you look on the back.
Ooh.
Oh, look at that. Oh, that's VGA.
There you go.
Oh, wait.
No,
over
no,
there.
serial.
No, I see
Look above
serial.
the HDMI.
See it.
There's the RS-232 right there. So
And a card
In
reader beside
theory.
it, apparently.
well, actually, can you adapt game port to serial? I don't know if you can or not.
I would.
Maybe.
I would assume
I
so.
don't know.
There's still somebody out there.
I've got some PCI sound cards that still have game ports, so I can send you one.
Oh, yeah.
I have a few. With game ports.
I got an
on them, but thank you
L64
for
kicking around somewhere.
You know what? Whenever I hear
Mine-
that
yeah,
Leva
go.
name, I always think, should just leave me alone.
Aha.
Not living La Viva Loca.
No,
I
leave
think
me alone.
that Leva Las Vegas. You don't think that?
That?
Jim, the podcast needs a musical sting, I think, in some way.
Yeah.
We
and
can't afford Sting.
That's not what
Actually.
I meant, but yeah.
But But yeah, I think vMix supports the soundboard functionality. But
You might want to do that.
what we need to do is we need to give it to the audience, give it to the Discord.
Oh my
channel,
gosh.
and let them
That
control
would
when
not
it's
Oh,
go
yes,
poorly at
yeah.
all.
And
Really,
then
just
thought
tap
balloons.
into a voice channel.
Thought
with them
balloons and
periodically.
sound effects.
I can do it in post, but anyway, let's finish up our mobile processor news. So we talked all about AMD. Well, Intel's got their counterparts, the 10th gen H series that's come out. Now, whereas all that news about AMD and its exciting new process node and architecture and all the the great things that are happening there, Intel unfortunately is still stuck on 14 nanometer, and they're still stuck on the Skylake basis of their original parts, and they're still kind of at both desktop and mobile. They're just stuck because things went awry with their 10 nanometer plans. And now the lower power stuff, the Ice Lake and upcoming Tiger Lake stuff, that's exciting. That's more interesting because they actually made the leap there. But for the H series, they can only further refine, and they've gotten really good at refining. And this new part does some interesting things. Like I think it hits 5.2 gigahertz, 5.3 gigahertz.
5.3.
And that's incredible for a mobile part, but it also uses a lot of power, and it's real hot, and it can't sustain those clocks for a long time. But I don't know. Sebastian, you wrote this up for us. Take us through what is Intel have on store for us for their H series parts, the new 10th gen H series.
Well, we'll talk about the clock speeds because that was the big thing. 5 gigahertz on laptop across the board, pretty much, at least with the higher end parts. But it's on the same architecture, like you said. They've done some things, and this is kind of what they did with the desktop, the high end desktop that we looked at last summer when they released the 10980K part. And so with this, you get the same kind of things. You get like a slight memory support bump from 2666 up to 2933. That really doesn't matter that much on the Intel side of things, and especially if you're not using integrated graphics. But so there's that, and then there's higher clocks. But essentially, other than the platform itself, and they're big on their platform, and rightfully so for certain things. Like they can advertise the fact that they have Thunderbolt 3, whereas if you get one of the Ryzen 4000 parts, you don't get that. And they have Wi-Fi 6 built into their PCH, and things like Optane support. So, but for the CPU itself, and if you're watching the video right now, we have the slide up here showing the new lineup. So the i9 10980HK is the new flagship mobile part. It's going to replace the 9980, and it has a base clock of 2.4 gigahertz, but a maximum single core turbo boost of 5.3, which is actually misleading because that's with the use of thermal velocity boost, or TVB, which relies on a certain amount of headroom to further boosts by a couple of hundred megahertz past the top single core turbo boost frequency afforded by the standard boost. So you have to have a bigger thermal footprint basically to even hit 5.3, and it's not a sustained clock speed. So it's murky. I think realistically it's more like a 5.1 gigahertz processor depending on how it's implemented. But anyway, 8 cores, 16 threads as before, still 45 watts, still 16 megs of cache. And like I said, the memory increase from 2666 to 2933. And there's also a Core i7 10875. These numbers are getting really awkward. They actually have a product, I think it's an i3, that's a 10110 right now. So
I'm starting to think we should do it like phone numbers.
yeah.
Like it's not the 10. It's the 10970 HKX2 E2.
They're insulting me in hexadecimal.
Yeah, what does 10110 isn't really anything, I guess. It's
Could be
22. But yeah, and at least it's not Ice Lake. Ice Lake adds those like the G7 and the G5 to the end, right? To let you know what kind of graphics it has. But yeah, it's the last generation over again, but at higher clock speeds. and minor memory bump. I don't know if I'm missing anything here, but it's telling whenever a product refresh happens and the charts go to compared to a 3-year-old machine or compared to a 3-year-old graphics card. We've seen this with graphics card refreshes, like when, a company would go from, say, a 480 to a 580 and then talk about upgrade cycles. I think NVIDIA has done this before. Intel has done this. They're doing it now. So, yes, this is a compelling part if you're on a Kaby Lake system. You're going to get a significant improvement in performance because the clocks are so much higher. But it's not really introducing anything new. And if you go out there and buy anything with a Coffee Lake CPU in it, that's the 8th gen or 9th gen, or this, it's going to have fairly similar performance. You're just getting that 5 gigahertz max turbo on this thing.
And that was 14 nanometer. No matter how many pluses you deal with, there's only so many ways to skin a cat with silicon. I mean, unless you just radically redo your entire thing with some genius architecture, but the way they've been going, I mean, I think they're kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel of what they can do with what the tools that they have without doing clean sheet.
Well, then that's the unspoken reality, and they don't. Well, they have admitted this on a few occasions, but they're never going to tell you this isn't ideal. But that's everything that's happened in the last 5 years has been not ideal because they had to start over, right? I mean, and it doesn't mean that they're bad products, but they're not. This isn't where they thought they'd be in their long-term strategy meetings.
Now think about what AMD would have right now if they had this design for Zen and they didn't have a working process to put it on. Like if they had all these grand plans for what they do on 7 nanometer and 7 nanometer wasn't working, but they don't have their own fab. That was spun off many years ago, and they work with TSMC for their current stuff. And TSMC has been a partner of theirs. What's that?
It would still be an improvement because they would still probably do a chiplet architecture with Zen 2 even at 14 nanometer, but you're not going to get some of the efficiency improvements that we have seen. I think you would see much the same clocks, but you would not see the sustained clocks because of power and heat. But I think that overall, the architectural jump from Zen to Zen 2 it's significant. But the one area I think that they would have had most problems with was probably the L3 cache, because 32 megs on a stinking chiplet is pretty impressive. And that would have been a huge power sink and a tremendous amount of die space. And so we probably would have seen a Zen 2 with 16 megs of L3. But other than that, I mean, it's still not going to be a huge die, but it's not going to be small. Is that
a good point?
Anyway. The L3 cache would have been taken the cut if they didn't have 7 nanometer.
And to be fair, overall, especially regarding things like boost and base and how long can they hit that 5.3, a lot of workloads are affected or noticeable based on those short bursty little things. Because most people aren't on their laptop, especially just running Blender 24/7. They're opening a file, loading a model, opening an Excel spreadsheet. And if you get those higher single core frequencies and you pair it with something like Optane, which despite I think it was marketed poorly, but it is very fast for random ops that you kind of do, there would probably be a measurable difference there in terms of experience. It's going to be small now because everything else is caught up. All NVMe drives, even QLC, are fast. The feeling is there. So there are workloads where Intel makes sense. It's just that the roles have reversed. That those are the minority now. Those workloads in the situations where you'd say Intel over AMD. But I do want to point out, I want to thank our old friend, our good friend, Alan Malventano. He sent me a lovely screenshot, just making sure that we're aware of the impending doom in the Cincinnati area. I've heard. I don't know if you guys.
Wait,
can
what was
hear it,
that
but-
from? What was that from? What is that called? What's the app that everybody's lamenting the loss of on the
Dark
Dark
Sky.
Sky.
Dark Sky.
It
Of course,
might
Alan,
be.
longtime iPhone user, he may very well be using that app.
Yeah. So thanks, Alan. Appreciate it. And if the show abruptly stops, that's probably why.
By the way, I'm looking up information about thermal velocity boost here, and it sounds like they've gone back to where it was with Coffee Lake H, which is a 200 megahertz boost. And that restriction was if T-Case is 50C or lower and turbo power budget is available for Coffee Lake R, Whiskey Lake U, and Comet Lake U. That was only a 100 megahertz boost, and that was if T-Case is at 70C or lower and turbo budget is available. So there's restrictions about it. I wanted to say it's 65C.
It's
sounds right.
265. Yep. 200 megahertz and
Yeah.
65C.
Okay. So, I mean, it's not impossible, but you get really toasty quick. If you've used one of those processors for any kind of, sustained workload, you're going to be well up over 65 watts or 65C, depending on room temperature and all that stuff. But for single thread stuff, yeah, I mean, those typically live in like the 35 to 45C range until you really start doing something. So maybe. I mean, I've used Intel stuff before where single threaded boost was very snappy feeling. It really depends on how quickly it turbos up. I'm sure they've been optimizing for that. So,
And also, real quick too, as Sebastian pointed out earlier, Intel is touting their platform advantages like Thunderbolt and Wi-Fi. Now, Thunderbolt could be added. There's nothing prohibiting them from manufacturer from pairing Thunderbolt chip. You've seen on some Ryzen motherboards, but the integrated Wi-Fi 6 is, I think that's important because I've seen a lot of laptops, including AMD laptops, where they don't go with a good Wi-Fi card, and it makes it today especially it makes it very difficult to use. Like the Ryzen based Microsoft Surface laptop I think it had a Qualcomm AC card in there, and it was terrible. The performance was really bad. Whereas the Intel based model goes with the integrated Wi-Fi 6 that they've got there. And whatever you want to say about Intel, their Wi-Fi 6 integrated solution is outstanding. It is a very high performance, reliable, solid card. It's good. So you got to make sure that that's something when you're going with a Ryzen system, make sure you pay attention to who the OEM has used for wireless on that board.
What do you think is the best for AMD now? If they can't have Intel Wi-Fi 6, who's making the best?
Well, they paired the Intel AC chip on, like the Lenovo's, I think, pair the Ryzen processors with Intel. It's not 6, but it's 5 AC.
Yeah.
And that was really good because it's not 6, but it's a really good AC card. But and Qualcomm, I'm sure, has better stuff than whatever Microsoft chose to use in that one instance. But yeah, we'll see.
It's
Any
interesting.
other?
I've got a motherboard, an AMD motherboard with an Intel Wi-Fi 6 chip.
An AMD motherboard with an Intel Wi-Fi 6?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't think I've seen that combo yet.
Yeah, no, it's the one I just sent you the video.
Oh, okay.
The ASRock Phantom Gaming X. It's got Wi-Fi 6.
Well, there you go. Then everybody wins.
PGX, as we say in the biz. It's the PGX.
PGX.
I don't know. That's how Asus refers to it internally. I had no idea what our contact at Asus was talking about initially when he sent me a note about that a while back. I'm like, PGX? What is the PG? Oh, Phantom Gaming X. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got you.
Well, I mean, most Threadripper boards ship with an Intel wireless chip anyways, so win-win for Intel in that case.
It's funny because a lot of these systems, including the ones I've put together for benchmarking, it's a AMD processor, an NVIDIA graphics card, and Intel either Ethernet or wireless. So you have everybody represented there. It's like beautiful. It's like a rainbow.
We stand around holding hands, singing "We Are the World."
Yeah,
But
and hope it doesn't blue screen.
Okay, so
Maybe if we all get together and sing Imagine, that our video watching will go.
Right. You see,
Maybe,
Jim,
maybe
all you had
think a
to
different
all you had to
song.
ask us was to be nice.
think you
this
got the
time. That's
slope
all you had
wrong.
to do was just say, "You guys have to be nice today."
But
That's all you had to say.
that's only effective if you're singing from your mansion.
Maybe
Yes, that's
something
true.
from. We could do a tiptoe through the tulips in really high voices, and it's going to take off.
It's possible. Anything's possible.
Okay.
We'll see.
Okay, yeah. The Josh, does that okay? Because I'm looking at the specs
Okay.
for the Meg X570 Godlike board. That's a
Mhm.
AMD board that AMD shipped out with the processors initially. It uses the killer Wi-Fi 6 AX1650, and that is an Intel Wi-Fi 6 card with the sort of killer wrapping, the killer software around it. So I think
Yeah.
that's in a number of AMD devices out there, like high end.
Yeah, it's
That's-
definitely in motherboards that are above $300. It seems
Yeah.
like. Yeah.
I had completely
So
forgotten.
all Threadripper motherboards.
Yeah, because I see Killer all the time, and I'd forgotten that they're now Intel, basically, with the
Yeah.
exception of I think one Ethernet chip. They're all their new stuff's Intel. So
Oh.
okay, well then we're going to take our quick break to thank our first sponsor this week. We'll be right back. One of the most important decisions in business, and especially small business, is finding the right person. That's why it's crucial to use the right tools during the hiring process, and that's where LinkedIn can help. LinkedIn Jobs is a powerful yet easy-to-use service that can quickly match your open job role with a qualified candidate. LinkedIn Jobs leverages the existing LinkedIn Business Network and its active community of more than 675 million members worldwide to help you identify and screen candidates. And it's not just about a potential candidate's past experience or certifications. LinkedIn Jobs allows you to focus on the hard and soft skills that can help you determine if someone would be a good fit. Things like a candidate's ability to collaborate on a complicated project, their ability to think creatively about problem solving and future strategies, and their ability to adapt to new information in unexpected situations. And thanks to LinkedIn's large network, your post will be seen every day by people who have the skills to fill your open role. And here's the beauty again of leveraging that huge LinkedIn network. Your post will even be seen by people not explicitly looking for a new job, but who otherwise perfectly match your job's requirements. Because sometimes the perfect candidate may not even know there's a better opportunity out there. And despite all of these features, using LinkedIn Jobs to post an application and screen candidates is simple and fast. You can have a post submitted and live in just minutes and be screening candidates within hours. 80% of hirers on LinkedIn found a qualified applicant in just 24 hours. And overall, someone is hired using LinkedIn every 8 seconds. It's no wonder that companies rate LinkedIn Jobs the #1 hiring platform for delivering quality hires. So if you're looking for that right person for your business, find them with LinkedIn Jobs. You can pay what you want and get the first $50 off. Just visit linkedin.com/PCPer. Again, that's linkedin.com/PCPer to get $50 off your first job post. Terms and conditions apply. We thank LinkedIn Jobs for their support of the PC Perspective podcast. And we're back. So let's continue on with the show. We're done with mobile processors, but we're going to continue talking about processors in general, specifically the release timeframe for both Intel and AMD's upcoming desktop processors. So this would be Ryzen 4000 for desktop, which is Zen 3 as opposed to Zen 2 on Ryzen 4000 mobile, and Intel's Comet Lake S series parts as well. Now, there had been some reports. We knew that Intel's would be coming out sometime in the next month or so, and the Digitimes report says that it's going to be end of April. It's going to be dependent on the supply chain, and obviously things are still in flux with the global economy, so we'll see how that works out. And then with AMD's processor, the original rumors were October, and this most recent Digitimes report says it's actually September that we might see those Zen 3 Ryzen 4000 desktop parts. So that would be pretty exciting. Although, again, we'll see. I don't know if the supply chain will support that and if anyone will have any money left to buy them if it can. But is that what do you guys think? Is that sooner or later than you had thought?
That was sort of the news for quite a while, was that we'd see this second half of this year, and they've been very consistent with that message. So one hopes that it's also accurate, and that In a way, I sort of believe that AMD is going to do it a little bit quicker than Intel is.
You mean in terms of like
see,
actually
and we'll see
getting
what these-
getting volume?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
getting volume to people.
Comet Lake would launch, but not actually be available to buy until later.
Now, the one thing that it does kind of baffle me, and part of it's because, even though I'm locked and I'm stupidly busy during the day at work, is that they're sort of talking about the 600 series chipsets, where I'm like, what are you going to add? Like what do you have to add? You've got a chip that spans, depending on the model, literally 3 generations of motherboards. So you're adding in a new generation. Like, what is there going to be some sort of a driving feature that I'm not thinking of that makes sense? That
I think the biggest driving feature of a next generation chipset is lower power PCI 4.0.
That would be nice.
That's Rocket
That
Lake.
would be my
I think
guess.
The leaked rumor is that you don't see that until Rocket Lake on the 500 series.
Well, that's on Intel side.
Well, that's Intel.
Yeah,
I'm talking
sorry.
AMD.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Missed that.
Yeah.
I know.
You're fine. No, I think that would be kind of the killer. I mean, we probably more USB 3.1 Gen 2 ports. Maybe a little expansion in terms of IO that way. But I think that maybe if at least if I were a PM, I'd be looking to get that power down from the 15 watt TDP that the X570 takes right now. That would be my biggest goal, because otherwise, in terms of IO, yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, what more are you going to add? You can't do Thunderbolt 3 for obvious reasons. I mean, you can try, but what is the rollout of the next generation of USB that is actually kind of Thunderbolty?
Oh God, USB 3.
Well, it's going to be USB 4
by 4
It's
by
USB
Lightning
4.
Speed X12, which thankfully has been rebranded.
But I don't see
originally,
them doing
good
that in the
God.
600 series.
Yep.
That
We're going to call it USB 2.
Too
It's going to be
fast.
perfect.
That seems too soon. That would be awesome, but it seems too soon.
Yeah,
They're going to call it
just
USB.
like the Battlefield.
USB 1X.
From Battlefield 4 to
Yeah.
1.
USB Series X.
Yeah, I think USB 4. I'm recalling late 2020, but yeah, that's like initial launch. I doubt they'd be ready to go so soon, and then that also is beyond the release window here. I mean, but the good news is, unlike on the Intel side, this is going to be yet again a pin-compatible drop-in upgrade. It's going to be backwards compatible with previous gen chips. You can go buy a new motherboard for your chip. You can buy a new chip now and stay on 570 or 470, and then go to the 600 series later. So I don't know how much longer. I think this is probably the last time for Zen 4. I think they said they were going to a new platform, but
I think memory is the big thing.
Yeah,
because I would assume DDR5 would be on desktop by the time the 700s or whatever series, the post AM4 era.
But yeah,
so they're bound to need more power pins in the socket at some point. They're bound to.
If they keep the trend of core increases per generation going, then
I always like that the latest AMD is a 1331. It's elite almost. Pins
What?
1331.
Oh, the pin
count.
Pin count.
Yeah.
If you spell it out, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
It's the only time I've ever gotten one of your references, Josh.
Thank the Lord.
Ding!
Chime in.
All right. So this is a report from Digitimes citing industry partners like motherboard manufacturers. So we'll see. And as always with Digitimes, sometimes things are kind of lost in translation or through a telephone game. So maybe this September is when the motherboard manufacturers get the parts, and we don't see until October. But either way, we know at some point later this year. So that'll be good. And then if you are waiting on Intel, it shouldn't be too much longer. Just as Jeremy alluded to, based on some previous launches, it might be a question of availability, though. Even if it
Yeah.
does actually
Now something
launch.
also to consider real quick is that Taiwan has been relatively unaffected by the current pandemic, and it looks like that they've kind of got things on lockdown. And so the majority of the high-end fabs that are doing these 7 nanometer and these 7, well, if they want to call it 7 plus or whatever of the next generation, their workforce and supply chain does not look to be impacted whatsoever. Now, if you look at Intel, the vast majority of their 4 major fabs are in the United States. And I couldn't tell you how that is affecting their business. And I think they have one major fab in Israel as well. And Israel is super locked down. So yeah, I'm kind of wondering if AMD is not slightly lucking out in terms of who they've chose as their manufacturing partner, and Intel is going to be experiencing some interesting possible lockdowns as well in their locations, and especially the one in the Pacific Northwest. Yeah, I don't have all concrete information on that, but this is something to consider going forward, because it's certainly important.
Yeah. And just beyond actually manufacturing, just the distribution and getting things to stores. And are the stores even open? I mean, here, I believe nationwide, the Best Buy policy, because the one here does it, is you can't go in the store, but if you order online, or even if you just show up, an employee will come out through a shield and ask you what you want, and then go in and get it and bring it out to you. And so that's working.
Wait,
But
do you have
some
to pay
stores-
for it?
Well, yes, and they bring
I'll
out
do that tomorrow. Oh, okay.
That's certainly working.
You
So-
can't browse curbside. You can't. No.
Oh,
So I'll just hang on. I want to compare. I'll hang on to this one. You go get me
this
the other one. I want to see the
exactly.
15.
Can I see the other one of this? Can I? Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me show give me the one with the 16 gig.
Yeah. Can
So
you bring out a
that's-
couple
Do you
of
mind if I
displays so I
taste
can see
it?
how this laptop feels?
Yeah. So that's obviously going to
I
have
know,
an
is it
impact
heavy?
on volume, because
Yeah.
some people may not want to put up with that. Some people may not know. A lot of people don't even want to leave the house because they're of their own concerns. So it's going to be really.
I think it's safe to say at this point that all announcements, at least right now, are just going to be paper launches. That they can announce whatever they want, and that availability is going to be something else entirely.
But anyway, let's jump over to another announcement in the last week or so. NVIDIA, as we talked about, NVIDIA had their new 2060 Max-Q mobile GPU that launched in that Zephyrus AMD Ryzen laptop, but they also updated the rest of their lineup, and Sebastian wrote this up for us. So tell us what's going on with the latest super updates to RTX Mobile.
I don't know why I feel like we've already talked about this, but we haven't done a show in 2 weeks, so that's not possible. But maybe no, it was because we were talking about the new DLSS 2.0 a while back, and this part of their announcement reiterated that. But this is different because they literally brought the 2080 and 2070 Super from desktop down to mobile, and if you compare the specs, they're exactly the same except for clocks, as you'd expect, because it's a notebook part. One thing that is different, though, that I didn't initially catch until I was actually going through all the technical info when I wrote up the news post, they are using lower power memory, apparently, for the new their new boost. Because if you're familiar, there's a couple different kind of boosts, I don't know, call protocols, systems on NVIDIA laptops. There's Max-Q, which is something that's like not lower footprint, but thinner form factor machines. This is something that I think came out in 2017. I remember Ryan talking about this. It was at Computex back in 2017 when they announced it. And Max-Q basically was kind of a new system to put a larger GPU that normally would require a big gaming laptop into a thinner profile machine. And so with the new devices, with the new GPUs, including the Supers, the 2070 and 2080 Super, there will be Max-Q variants. And part of the deal, like I said, there's lower voltage GDDR6, there's an advanced Optimus, and they are talking about a new dynamic boost. And the claim is that the new Max-Q is double the efficiency of the last one. And they're doing a lot of the kind of stuff that I know AMD was talking about when they did their last mobile launch. And they were talking about kind of the overall thermal impact of different aspects of the system and skin temperature and the way they're handling boosts. And it's kind of the same thing, only here NVIDIA's big emphasis was in shared thermals. They were talking about the static thermals and how if you sort of segment CPU and GPU and can move between them on the fly, balancing power, it'll be interesting to see exactly how these shifts work in relation to existing technologies or if this is something entirely new. I know they said electrically there is some new stuff, and they beyond just the lower voltage GDDR6 memory, they were talking about voltage regulators. So it's something that cannot be implemented on existing hardware. So if you already have a Max-Q, you can't just download the latest version of GeForce Experience and get the improved efficiencies. You actually have to have whatever's been electrically certified to generate the higher efficiency boost. But performance as they, of course, we don't have hands-on yet, as they're advertising it, is better, but it's not like double the performance. It's apparently much greater efficiency. Battery life was something they talked about. They talked about improvements of up to 20%, but that was in a ray tracing situation using DLSS in its performance mode. So a lot of the stuff is interesting. We have to wait till we have hardware in hand, but it's the big takeaways were new Max-Q requires new hardware. So you got to buy a new laptop that actually has the new dynamic boost, and then the desktop GPUs, the 2070 and 2080 Super hitting the mobile market. And we're talking like, with the exception of the 2080 Super, which doesn't quite have the memory speed. So the bandwidth is lower. It's only 448 gigabytes per second because it's 14 gigabit memory instead of 15. But everything else other than the clocks is pretty much the same. And these can be configured differently. These are like 80 to 150 plus watt TDP range for the 2080 Super. And the 2070 Super is in the 80 to 115 watt GPU power range. So we'll see these implemented in some big monstrous gaming machines, and we'll see them implemented in like the really thin Max-Q designs. And the clock speeds have a huge variance. So like boosts go anywhere from 1080 megahertz to 1560, depending on how it's configured, for example, with the 2080 Super. So, just kind of expected trickle down from desktop for mobile. I don't know if you guys had any thoughts about this, or it seems like it kind of took a while. We've been on the 2070 and 2080 in laptop for quite some time. Oh, and last thing, 2060 doesn't change. There's no 2060 Super, at least not yet. So the 2060, their news there was that was going to hit the $999 laptop segment. So that's what they're doing instead of releasing a new product. So there was a number of machines from various vendors. Apparently starting the week of April 15 is what they're saying. I don't know about real availability yet, but more coming in May. And machines from like Acer, Asus, Clevo, Dell, Gigabyte, HP, Lenovo, MSI, and Razer. And machines with RTX 2060 starting at $999.
Yeah, I mean, NVIDIA has done a really good job with their branding, as they normally do, and their studio creator stuff. And seeing these go, they've generally just had much better adoption of their products across manufacturers. So yeah, you'll be seeing these in lots of different notebooks.
Yep, for the foreseeable future, because there is nothing to compete with these on AMD's mobile offering currently.
Yeah, they had that one picture, where was it here, showing performance, and one of their comparisons was the MacBook Pro 16, which, as we know, is their Navi mobile GPU, the 5500M, I believe. So that's an interesting comparison to have there.
5500 seems a little down market for that comparison.
It's what was available. And Apple will still happily charge you $6,000.
And we're happy to pay that. Happy to pay. Yes.
Wait, was $6,000 for the 2 terabyte memory up or storage upgrade, or is that? I guess they came down.
It doesn't.
It's more
matter.
realistic now. I know it doesn't matter. What matters is the OS,
Which
or
is
at
a
least it used to,
which is a piece of
trash.
crap. Yeah,
Yeah,
Catalina
the new
is
OS is
Mhm.
trash.
garbage.
Okay, yeah,
Right.
Yes.
don't bother with that. Yeah, it's annoying.
Yeah.
No more 32-bit apps. Kind of a killer.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we've talked a lot about processors in this show, and in terms of desktop processors, if you're looking for a new AIO cooler, Fractal, formerly known as Fractal Design, came out with a new line of Celsius Plus liquid coolers. So what's the story here? Anything new or exciting about these guys?
Yeah, well, I actually I had to look back in time when I'd reviewed the Celsius. I did the S24 way back in, I think, 2016. And it was impressive. It was very quiet, good performance. And these are, I think, their first major revision in now 4 years. But they've added a 280 model to the mix. It's not just a 240 and a 360 anymore. So 280 millimeters available. But the big thing is it's a total redesign, basically. The essential materials are the same. It's still a copper cold plate. It's still an all aluminum radiator, but it's a new pump design. It's new fans. They've changed the fittings. Everything's different. So the by the numbers, it sounds like it'll be a lot better performing, even though they're tuning it for lower noise. And I remember when I reviewed it, there was like a selection ring physically on it where you could go between PWM and like an automatic mode built into it, where it had its own logic about how fast the pump should be and the fans and that sort of thing. Because it's sort of interesting the way that Fractal does it with these. They have a fan hub on the radiator. I think it's situated with this one in between the two fittings for the hoses on the radiator itself. And the sleeves for the hoses actually conceal the wiring, which is nice. The new one adds, if you get the Prisma version, they add ARGB cables, again, hidden in the sleeves for the fans. And then there's an ARGB cable for all of them for the ARGB ring around the radiator. But anyway, useful cooling type stuff. The pump is a lower speed this time, although it can actually spin up to 3,500 RPM. It actually has been reduced from the old range, which was 1950 to 3150 RPM, way down to 800 to 2,800 RPM. And I don't think I've ever used an all-in-one with a pump that was only 800. So it sounds like this will have very, very quiet, idle noise from the pump. It only spins up when it has to. And it can move more water, apparently. So the actual measurements with the new pump, it draws more power and it can move a little bit more. It's 1.46 millimeter. How do you pronounce this? Anybody? H2O? Millimeter something? The pressure measurement.
Yeah.
Yeah, millimeters of water. It's a measurement. Of,
Usually it's millimeters
Vacuum.
mercury, but
yeah.
or yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
Millibars,
they're
but
saying it's
no, that's
up
pressure.
from 1 to 1.46 at 50C.
It sucks more.
Yeah.
There's
So
a
it's more
bigger
efficient.
number.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, check it out. They're all new. They have a full lineup with or without ARGB fans, and the pricing
And they've
seems
got
okay.
Yeah, a
high.
little bit high.
Yeah,
But it's got a
compared
5-year
to like
warranty.
Corsair, for example. It does. Yeah, the 5-year warranty is
Yeah.
nice.
So the 5-year warranty actually does change things a bit because most of them are 3, maybe 2.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
I think
that does actually
Yeah.
help a bit.
Yeah, it does long term. I struggle a little bit with the fact that to get a 240 millimeter with ARGB fans, it's $150.
Yeah, and you can get a Cooler Master 240 millimeter for $80 with RGB.
Mm-hmm.
But that thing, I have it, and it's not fantastic with a Ryzen 3000 because it does that. There gets to be hotspots on the Ryzen 3000, and that whole thing just spools up, and it's like, thanks. Then it calms down for quite a while, but then just randomly spools up, and you look at your computer, and you're like, what are you talking about? I'd be curious to test that with a Ryzen 3000.
Yeah, it's all in how the fan's profile is set and everything, and I can't stand that either. I don't like it when it's inconsistent. I'd rather it slowly spool up, more graduated steps under load. But we'll have to get one of these in. I know they offered. It was one of those things where I think availability is kind of the problem, where there probably aren't a lot of launch reviews. I've not actually checked, but the product will be.
Oh no, I did
probably
post. There were four of them that I saw.
Oh, okay.
I have a
And
build
so-
with their previous S24 that I built in 2018 with a 8700K at 5 gig, and it's been running just fine. It's very quiet, appreciated, and it's been really nice. I switched the older fans out for some Thermaltake ring fans because I like the way it looked better. I know RGB, leave me alone. But it was hey, got PC Part Picker Build of the Week once a couple years ago. So there. Anyway, it's been running great. You know, if they kept up the very same way they built the previous version, the S24, you know, I could personally say it ran really well. It's been running really well for a couple of years. Quiet, and still running. Keeping an 8700K at 5 gigahertz just fine.
All right. Well, that's the Fractal Celsius Plus, the new update. So when you're shopping, make sure you look for that Plus if you want the latest model. A positive review from Brett and Sebastian, as he said, when he reviewed the original one in 2017. It got a silver award, so it's pretty good there. You can check it out. Pricing starts at $129.99 and goes up to $200 for the top of the line 360 mil version there. Okay, let's talk about networking. Firefox is just giving me all kinds of trouble today.
Damn, it was too fast. We're done.
It's probably
Jim, did you update Firefox? Did you update?
I'm thinking I didn't. That's
Yeah, you
what
probably
the-
should
God. Oh my God, you've been owned. Oh my God.
I only load Firefox on this system to show the screen capture every week.
Jim.
I bet mine is
owning
even
time.
older than yours.
Oh, so you're contributing to that story we're going to talk about later, then?
Yes.
Like it's
Jim's
Oh,
a problem.
good God, man!
it's
I'm on
all-
74.0.
Yeah, hang on a second.
Adware.
All right, let's try to read.
Well, as he
that.
struggles through his old ancient internets that don't work because, well, I mean, you know, it's not like there's tornadoes and lightning bolts everywhere, and the packets are very, very frightened. But yeah, so the
You're muted, Josh.
25 gigabit Ethernet consortium just
You know what I was saying. I was yelling
So-
lightning bolt, lightning bolt, lightning bolt.
Lightning bolt! Lightning bolt! Lightning bolt!
yes, you were.
Freeze.
Don't lick the poison knife. So yeah, the 25 gigabit Ethernet consortium has been around for quite a while because that used to be a pie in the sky sort of goal. And so lately we've been seeing 100 gigabits as being, you know, doable. And in some cases, if you're lucky enough, you can actually play with that sort of crap. But they've moved on and have now put out a very initial white paper about the 800 gigabit specification, which, when you think about it for a moment, is just absolutely and utterly brilliant. You're talking ridiculous amounts of available speed, assuming you can convince your ISP to give it to you, which is going to be a completely different discussion. So they have now renamed themselves the Ethernet Technology Consortium because, well, you can't date yourself too badly. And the actual idea of it looks interesting. So the idea is that you will have two sort of teamed 400 gigabits devices, which are presenting to the network through a singular access device as a single 800. Which growing up during dial-up, this is just unbelievable. Like 56K was just so amazing when it came out. And now we're sort of talking about this, and it's realistic. Like, it is a very initial layout of what this is going to be, but it is good enough to be a specification, is good enough to be built on, and so that the major providers are going to be looking at it. And if you have never heard of these guys before, it's a team up of Cisco, Microsoft, Google. There's, I think, around about 40 or 45 major players involved in doing this because they all benefit from a standard to be able to provide internet. If you get a whole bunch of different sort of Ethernet specifications going on, well, it's stretching the metaphor a bit, but you end up with a mess of what the Wi-Fi is going through right now, where you don't know which letter it is that you actually want, nor what it means, nor why there's a LIGO attached to it occasionally. So it is very exciting. You don't expect to see it anytime soon. I mean, we're finally starting to see 10 gigabit E on motherboards if you're willing to pay for it. Although, as I said, you're never going to get it from your residential provider. But for the cloud services, for the guys that you're pulling your gaming streaming down from, the YouTubes and Googles of the world, this will let them serve you so much faster. And, honestly, for those that are in a business where they could be interested in this, gives you a damn good reason to start pushing those PCIe 4.0 NVMe SSDs on your boss, because you're bloody well going to need that sort of bandwidth to keep up with this. Anyone got any interest in this?
Oh yeah. This is
more
great.
bandwidth to my house, please.
I mean, and obviously, as Jeremy said, this is not something you're going to have at home anytime soon.
Why?
Cost, hardware, infrastructure, lack of source and destination drives that are fast enough. You pick one. But,
come on, North America is full of dark fiber.
Yes, being unused, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
Man, I remember when we were at the old office before Ryan and all those guys left, and we had just set up our new NAS, and we were copying over 13 terabytes worth of stuff, and it was copying over gigabit Ethernet because that's what we had at the time. That was prior to our 10 gig upgrade, and it took a long time. And Ryan, or maybe it was Ken, somebody said, "God, gigabit Ethernet used to be amazing. It was like this huge, phenomenal thing.
Yeah.
This is now the slowest possible interface in the office." Because at that point, obviously, there was USB 3 and Thunderbolt, and
you can get that on a $120 motherboard.
Yeah.
Yeah, wasn't Gigi introduced 2005, 2006?
Sounds right, yeah.
It sounds right. But there we go. And now
we haven't done much in the last 15 years.
Yeah, and I just put all this Cat 6A in the walls. It's obsolete.
Well, to be fair, North America hasn't done that much. Rest of the world is in spots or a bit ahead of us.
Well, anyway, let's get the news wrapped up here so we don't go too long. And Jeremy, you've got another story for us, as you were alluding to before, about some security problems.
Yeah, if you're using the third most popular browser in the world, which is a depressing thing to say, and I'll have to talk about it more in a moment, they did spot some exploits out in the wild. Long story short, it's a use after free error, so the second that your memory is freed up, if you've been directed to a less than reputable website, they can sort of write stuff to that, and your processor will happily run that code afterwards. So all of those fun little browser architectural vulnerabilities on more so Intel, but definitely still on AMD, that's going to be a perfect place to slip these in. When this was announced, they did push up the 74.0.1 on your regular Firefox, or if you're on the extended support because people around you don't like to update their applications, it's 68.6.1. As usual, super quick update and grab it. They didn't give us much information other than it was spotted out in the wild and people were taking advantage of it because, we don't have enough viruses to deal with right at this moment.
In general, an update like this is important, but I've noticed too, there's been a lot of Plex updates, Office updates, Windows updates,
Zoom updates,
Zoom
A couple of times a day.
for security purposes, by all means.
They've hired that guy from Facebook, so things are going to be fine.
Absolutely.
Oh, great.
Absolutely. Facebook chief of security.
Yep, it's going to be fine.
Well, yeah, once worked at Cambridge Analytica.
But
Everything's fine.
Or was that the other guy?
No, that was another guy. But
Another guy.
security updates, by all means, yes. But anything that's not an essential update, don't ship it now. Because you got people working remotely, and they may not be able to get to the server or to the office, or or they're working remotely and they've got like call after call and they don't have a break to have a downtime. Like, just back off the updates that aren't essential.
It's like
just,
being a
just for little
doctor.
bit.
First, do no harm.
Yeah. So,
Oh, mate, my boss is saying this is the perfect time to start redoing all the GPOs. Everyone's remote. If it goes badly, it becomes a huge problem.
No. It is nice to reboot a
You
Windows
have so much spare time.
and not see that like waiting on updates thing. It's odd because haven't they frozen most like
they
there
might
are no
have.
feature updates being pushed right now.
No
feature updates,
update.
but security updates, they've actually increased the number per month.
As you well
Which
know
is
tomorrow, Josh.
Yeah.
Yeah, Josh would know. Poor Josh.
Well, there's over a dozen of them you got to deal with, aren't there?
Yeah.
Well, we hope if you're dealing with updates in any capacity, we hope you as the consumer or end user that you're doing well and surviving it. And if you're in charge of that update release
Back up
schedule,
twice,
just
update once.
Yeah, think before you hit that publish button. Oh man! Continuing on browsers. Although also let me just. I don't think you specifically said, Jeremy. You just said second most popular browser.
Third
most popular. Right. Sorry. But that's Firefox.
That's the problem.
We're talking about Firefox back there. Update your Firefox browser. But yes, Firefox no longer the second most popular browser. We got a
Credge.
Reincarnation of failed browsers back. Tell us about this, Jeremy.
Yes, the new Chromium skin. The browser formerly known as Edge, the browser formerly known as Internet Explorer, which we're going to have to figure out a short form for, and I do kind of like Credge, has by just about 0.4%, but still actually did it, pushed into second place for the most used browsers according to net market share. You would all know that Chrome is sitting happily at 80% of the usage. But yes, Chromium Edge is now the second most used browser on the planet. And you can't blame the corporations because 9 out of 10 of them are still running the old version because they're still dealing with IE9 compatibility, let alone 11. And so they have not pushed out this newer version of Edge. So this has got to be home use. Like these are got to be the people who got a laptop, used it once in a blue moon until they got locked into their house, and actually did, good on them, run a few updates because you would have had to update to be able to get the newer Edge, and have just pushed Firefox down. I can't believe I am saying that not only did Microsoft sort of back off on embedding the whole Internet Explorer into the OS at a deep, dark level, but they've adopted Chrome and they're now pushing out Firefox that pushed them out for so long. I really have to ask why still 1 in every 10 people is using Opera, but I mean, it's a personal choice, I guess, and I wish you well.
Well, so other factors like you said about people accessing updates and stuff, that aside, but isn't this, because I don't have any problem with the new Chrome-based Edge because it's Chrome with Microsoft built in, but it's just like
it's got testament.
A skin. Yeah, it's like it underscores how terrible original Edge was. And I liked its font rendering and it had smooth scrolling, but it had such a dearth of features at launch. It never really caught up.
It was barely compatible with SharePoint Online.
Yeah.
Which was brilliant.
Don't you remember the phrase embrace and extend? Don't you remember what that means?
No.
That was Microsoft's adage when they were building compatible things for a period of time. That was embrace the existing technology, but extend it with Microsoft's special sauce. Yes. That was their internal mechanic for embrace the open source element, but extend it with things that would only be ever compatible with Microsoft things. So and that's what begot, IE and Edge and all that.
Yeah.
And that was why you'd end up with your internal, big company operating system, so to speak, cross-company operating system would only ever work on IE or Edge. That was the reason behind that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well,
Resistance is futile. You will be assimilated.
Embrace and extend in capital letters.
well, hey, it's a
This
it's
week's
a
show is brought
new-friendly
to you
Microsoft.
exclusively using our new Silverlight player. You can
Yes.
download that directly from
Exactly. That's
Oh
exactly.
God,
Dude, it
I
was
ran
so
into
much better than
somebody who-
Flash, though.
Yeah,
So much
well,
better
than
than a
Flash.
migraine.
I'll give you
Just had an
that.
attack. There's an aneurysm going on over there right now.
No,
that way.
there were people like some people who don't ever check in with the computer issues are checking in because of the coronavirus and stuff. Like literally half of them are running Silverlight. And like, okay, and which service line are you on? Oh, I do the Google account.
What?
Yep. I found a 32-bit Windows 7 machine. Thankfully, we managed to get him off of it quickly.
Well, hey,
Yeah,
Aeroglass,
it's stuff
Aeroglass
coming
always looked great back then,
Oh, yeah.
but most of the Win 7 certified
Using-
systems couldn't run it.
No. Are you using how much of my onboard GPU just to show my desktop? Thank you.
All of it, and it looks great.
I love the transparency of window edges. That was very important. The title bar being transparent, so I could see a blurry rendition of my background through it. It's vital.
Glass.
Beautiful designs.
Dude, I miss that. Miss that more than you think.
So much.
well,
I want to use my 3D accelerator in desktop apps all the time.
Keeping it hot.
But look what it did to Texas Hold'em. Have you ever seen a more beautiful card game?
That was before they charged you for solitaire.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. It's only
Coming soon, Ray Trace Minesweeper.
$5 a month to subscribe to Microsoft Solitaire. But
At least it wasn't per play.
don't give them any ideas.
Sorry.
But,
I gotta say.
Yeah, so we're going to, before we jump into the reviews, we're going to take another quick break to thank our second sponsor this week, so we'll be right back. Today's show is sponsored by TextExpander, an incredibly powerful and handy tool for Windows, macOS, iOS, and Chrome that can save you hours of time by automating, simplifying, and correcting text input. At a basic level, TextExpander runs in the background and automatically inputs your custom text whenever you type a corresponding abbreviation. For example, you can configure TextExpander with a snippet, as they're called, that contains your full signature, including name, job title, email, and phone number. You then assign that snippet to an abbreviation that's easy to remember but unlikely to be typed otherwise. So in this case, you might use something like ZSIG, SIG for signature, and the letter Z in front to prevent an unintentional snippet call. Then, from virtually any application that supports text input, just type ZSIG and your full signature will appear. But that's just the tip of the iceberg for TextExpander. You can configure snippets that are hundreds, even thousands of words long if desired. You can add images and formatting that is automatically applied. You can even add automatically calculated variables, such as the current date or time, and then input date calculations, such as adding or subtracting dates and times from that current date. For example, let's say you have a small business that sends order updates to customers, noting the date the order was received and the expected ship date, which for your company is generally 1 week. With TextExpander, your snippets can contain all of the normal text you send to customers, including images, and variables that list the current date as well as the date 1 week from then. This type of email, which might take an employee 3 or 4 minutes to type out normally, can now be automatically generated in 1 second by typing in the handful of characters you chose as the snippet's abbreviation. TextExpander even allows for more flexibility by allowing snippets to have predefined fill-ins. These can be single or multi-line fields, an optional either-or selection, or a pop-up menu of choices. And if you have trouble thinking of some of your own snippets to create, you can even subscribe to public snippet groups that focus on autocorrecting common business and product names, fixing contractions in words with accented letters, automatically generating lorem ipsum placeholder text, and cleaning up and properly formatting copied JSON scripts. And because TextExpander is available on so many platforms, no matter how you set up your snippets, you can sync and share them with all of your devices and even other TextExpander users. All of these features are great for individual users, but there's also TextExpander for teams and enterprise, which not only lets users share their business-related snippets, but supports important features such as single sign-on, usage statistics, and user and group permissions, allowing businesses to decide who can use and edit their shared snippets. At a basic level, the way TextExpander works seems so simple, but when you start to use it and see how flexible and customizable it is, you quickly realize how incredibly powerful it can be. Even if you end up using only short snippets, if it saves you a few seconds on each action that you perform dozens or hundreds of times per day, then you're looking at major time savings over the long run. There's so much TextExpander can do. If you'd like to see more examples of how it all works and get some ideas for your own snippets, head over to textexpander.com/videos, where they have some great video tutorials. And also check out textexpander.com/webinar for interesting webinars and improving your productivity. I've used TextExpander for years, and I really think that once you try it out, you're going to be hooked. You can check out a free 30-day trial, and once you're ready to buy, be sure to get 20% off your first year by heading to textexpander.com/podcast and choosing PC Perspective from the Where Did You Hear About Us drop-down menu. Again, that's 20% off your first year at textexpander.com/podcast and choosing PC Perspective from the drop-down menu. Thanks so much to TextExpander for supporting the PC Perspective podcast. All right, we're back, and let's jump into the reviews. We've got 2 reviews this week, both from Corsair, and I believe both written by Sebastian. So take it away. We'll start with the mouse.
The mouse is really nice. It's the new Corsair, Dark Core RGB Pro. And I actually had the Dark Core RGB Pro SE model. And just as with the last generation, if you keep up on these things, the Dark Core RGB and RGB SE, or the last gen, missing the word Pro there. And the SE version has integrated Qi wireless charging. So again, the one that I had does, and they actually sent along their MM1000 mat for me to test this with. But this is a really, really nice mouse. But of course, that's a very personal thing. This is a bigger mouse. It's also rather heavy. The weight, if you don't add the optional grip to the right side that sort of makes it a symmetrical, like double wing style base, is 133 grams, I think, somewhere in there. Quite heavy. I mean, I had to check. The mouse I've been using on the regular basis is a Logitech mouse that weighs actually 97 grams, not including the cable. And this is, of course, a wireless mouse, but it's a multi-connectivity mouse, like the last generation. So it's they're slipstream wireless, so it's a very, very low latency wireless connection, like sub 1 millisecond wireless with a dongle. Or you can do Bluetooth 4.2 LE, or you can do USB. And when you have it plugged in with USB, it also charges the mouse. So even if you don't get the wireless charging version, the one that's $10 less, it charges just fine while you're using it plugged in. And they've moved to a USB-C connector on this as well. So you have a little bit more flexibility with charging it with like your phone charger or something else that you may have handy. But it's as far as I'm concerned, a very, very comfortable mouse, and one that I did actually have to adjust my style a little bit, gripping it and using it, because I'm a fingertip mouse user, which I could demonstrate. I mean, typically I use a mouse like this. This is actually a HyperX mouse I've had for a while.
You're not a palmer?
That's not how you should use a mouse.
No.
Yeah.
I don't use. Okay, this would be kind of a palm.
You're holding it wrong. You're holding it wrong.
Listen to me. Listen.
So do you use lotion before you palm that mouse that way?
I don't like to use lotion
do you do it
on
dry?
my palms. No, I do it dry,
So just
because otherwise you have unsightly oil marks on the surface.
And now I gotta
this
get
would
the
be a lot
stop.
better.
I gotta get the stopwatch out
Jim.
and make sure
All right.
we were 90 seconds away from that ad.
Just
Thanks,
add
Josh.
some filler music, Jim.
Yeah.
Just after the ad ends. play
Filler.
the old Josh Tech video. So anyway, a palm grip, I assume, this is my version of a palm grip. My palm is actually resting on the top of the mouse. I don't grip a mouse that way. I actually use a mouse kind of like this. So my fingers float over the top of it, and I literally move it around with my little finger and thumb on the mouse pad. So that's just what I've come up with over the years. So with this mouse, because it's larger, I ended up feeling kind of the base of my hand resting against the mouse, and I had to use a little bit more pressure to move it around because it was heavier. And I tried it with the optional right wing, like the added grip you can switch out on the right side of the mouse, and it makes it feel extremely wide but very stable. Like the sort of awkward way that I move a mouse around can sometimes tip it slightly, and this thing was not moving at all. But all of these initial impressions came using my old cloth mat. I have a SteelSeries mat, one of those like very common woven fabric mats. So then I got out the MM1000 that they sent along. I don't typically use a hard mouse surface. So you don't have to spend $80 on a mat with wireless charging like this one, but just moving the mouse from my cloth mat to this mat was like a revelation. It was so easy to move around the surface, which is such a low friction surface. It was like gliding around on ice. So at that
Lord,
point,
it sounds like when rat pads first came out, and you got that, and it was such hard plastic, and you could literally just barely push your mouse with one finger and go across the entire thing, and it was beautiful as compared to the old cloth mount. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
Weeds.
Or
Yeah,
the Ripper XXL that you've never opened.
can we have a
Never.
Ripper XXL versus MM1000 comparison? That would be enlightening.
Epic.
Yes. But yeah, I like I said in the review, I'm probably the last person on earth who's figured out that the hard mouse surfaces are like really great for these high performance mice because there's no friction moving them around. But this is where I think the weight was a huge benefit, because you take a lightweight mouse, and I know ultralight mice are a popular category, and I've seen, I think they're sub 50 grams for some of these. And I know Cooler Master, I think, has one where they've kind of hollowed it out. There's like big holes through it. Anywhere they don't absolutely have to have material, it's just gone as like a sensor and a frame. But this is the opposite side of that. So if you like a larger, heavier mouse, then this is great. But if you move it to a surface like that MM1000 mat, suddenly it moved around so easily that I could go back to my ridiculous, barely touching the mouse fingertip grip and move it around just fine. And then the body of the mouse itself is covered with a really grippy, rubber-like surface, with the exception of the buttons, which are a matte finish plastic. The only shiny plastic on this is a trim panel, or like kind of surrounding the thumb or the scroll wheel, and then down at the base. And any shiny area is going to pick up prints, but for the most part, the mouse actually does not. And this is, of course, a Corsair product, uses iCUE software, and that works fine. I mean, we've talked about iCUE with a number of products, including the other thing that I reviewed in the last week. And it's very easy to use, and you can adjust just about everything on this. It has 9 lighting zones. You can get down to like the little accent ring on the side of it below the left and right, like, or the left side mouse buttons. There's like 4 zones just on that. So you can get really into matching colors or color schemes or whatever you want with this thing, or just turn all the lights off, or do what I ended up doing, which was just make a sort of a faint bluish white glow. And I had just one color going. But battery life is something I didn't get into because I have not tried to validate their claims on battery life testing. It seemed to be accurate. It can go up to 50 hours on a charge if you have the lights off. I think they say like 16 hours with lights. Typically, that's like a 50% brightness thing. And it depends on how you have it connected. And I barely used Bluetooth. I used Bluetooth enough to make sure that it worked, but I far prefer to use the wireless dongle with anything that offers it because it's lower latency. But very impressed with the mouse. The pricing on it, $79.99 for the version without wireless charging. and then $10 more, $89.99 for the version with wireless charging integrated into it. And that I know Chris did our last review, actually at the end of 2018 for the original version of this. And he thought the pricing was a little high. I have a different perspective on it, I guess, which is a lot of the mice, at least that make their way to me, are in the $69 and up range. So to see a mouse like this, I didn't even get into the sensor and the polling rate and stuff. There's technical stuff about this mouse that's very impressive. I don't know. I will never make use of it. This has an 18,000 DPI native sensor in it. It's a new custom sensor they developed with PixArt, and it's not anything else. This also has a 2,000 hertz polling rate. You can have it set to its default 1,000, or you can toggle it to 2,000 using the software. Once you have toggled it, it actually remembers. There's multiple profiles built into the mouse. So whether you're using the software or not, anywhere you take the mouse, suddenly it's now 2,000 hertz. Am I going to notice a difference in polling rates using my, usual setup? Probably not. I also live in like the 65-ish 100 DPI range is my version of a high DPI setting on a mouse, because anything else, and it's kind of crazy. I don't have the skills to basically have my cursor fly from one side of the screen to the other with a minute motion and then immediately switch to like the sniper mode to like zero in on a target. But for those who do, I don't know of any sensor out there that's this high. There's a lot of 16,000 stuff out there, and PixArt's 3000 series, but this one is ridiculously high. It's a 3392 sensor, I think, which they developed with PixArt. And then that polling rate is very high. I've heard of gaming keyboards with the faster polling rate, but I have not seen a mouse yet. At least I haven't personally used a mouse yet with a really high polling rate. But anyway, it's expensive, but not the most expensive mouse I've ever seen. And for a 8 programmable button mouse with specs like these, it seems fair, but that's up to you. Just as the size and weight of this is going to be a very personal thing. And I'll let Jim, Jim, you can transition. You do it better than I do.
Well, thank you. That's the Corsair Dark Core RGB Pro. And we, as Sebastian said, there were 2 models. We reviewed the one that's $10 more with wireless charging. Editor's choice from Sebastian. And of course, in keeping with our review disclosure policy, I'll state just for the people who don't read the website, Corsair is an advertiser. They buy display ads at PCPer. They've done so for a long time. But we don't do sponsored reviews with them. This review, of course, was not sponsored. They provided the product on loan to Sebastian, and there was no exchanging of money or review of the material or approval of publication or anything like that. And that will also apply to the next Corsair thing we're about to talk about.
Indeed.
And
hey, how we talked about all-in-one liquid coolers earlier?
We did.
That new one from Fractal. Other companies have released them recently, including Corsair. This actually was something that was announced, I think, back at CES. I was probably sitting on this review sample for a while, and every once in a while, your contact will nudge you and say, hey, what's the status of this? And I'm like, what's the status of the H100? What? The iCUE? Maybe I have it. I found it in my attic. So somehow it worked its way slowly from my dining room to the attic stairs, where I admit I stage things on the attic stairs, and then all the way up into the attic proper. So, I grabbed it, reviewed it. It's the new iCUE H100i RGB PRO XT 240 millimeter all-in-one liquid CPU cooler review.
Wow.
And this thing has RGB lighting effects, obviously. The last generation did as well, which I discovered to my surprise. I had also reviewed back in the day. This is the XT version. There's no RGB fans or anything on this one. It just has like a lighting ring around it that you can customize or turn off or do whatever you want with. But ultimately, this is just the latest iteration of that now sort of classic H100 liquid cooler, which it's been almost a decade since the H100 launched. I remember, I think Ryan's review of it was back in like 2012, but that was kind of like the legitimate arrival of all-in-one liquid coolers, is something that they weren't going to supplant custom liquid cooling, but it was a very high performance option that was as good as anything from in the air category you were probably getting at that point. And then of course there was like the giants, like the Noctua NHD 14 that came out around the same time, the Thermalright Silver Arrow. But just comparing this from the last generation to this generation, I did not have one of the H100s from the last generation. I think I have it here somewhere, but I didn't have it to hand. And I had been using the 280 millimeter variant from the previous generation. So I ended up comparing the new H100 XT from this review to the last generation 280 millimeter model, thinking, this family, they say, has their highest performance yet. So for instance, I think their largest version, the 360 millimeter, they say is their best performing all-in-one that they've ever made. So there are some improvements to the pump, which is quieter now, by the way. And just in testing, if you look at the thermal results in my review, it came really close. If you have them both at their extreme cooling profile in the iCUE software, the H115, which is the larger one, the 280 millimeter, RGB Platinum, was less than 1.5 degrees better. It was 67.5 degrees under load. This is with the i7, or I wrote i7 there, it's an i9, 9900KS. That's the 5 gigahertz pre-overclocked 9900K. It pulls a lot of power from the wall, 289 watts from the wall on a CPU load with like Cinebench all core, for example. And I was running Blender. I was getting kind of inconsistent results because a processor like this, it runs Cinebench all core so fast, you have to run it so many times to try to average it out. So I did a Blender classroom render, which took about 8 minutes on this CPU, and then recorded the load temps from that. And this new cooler, the Pro XT, even a 240 millimeter cooler, was 68.9 delta, which for this CPU is actually great. And comparing it to a large air cooler, the Darkrock Pro 4, same circumstances, same CPU, and it was 72.4 delta. So it about 3.5 degrees cooler than the Darkrock Pro 4. It was louder. The Darkrock Pro 4 does have the advantage of being one of the quietest coolers I've ever tested, but it was quieter than, say, a Noctua NHD 14 PWM variant, which with this kind of load is spinning at like 100%. So it's interesting to look at the difference in performance when you go into the different modes, like balanced, quiet. The one bad thing about this was, at least for this CPU, which is kind of obvious, you would not pair a 9900KS with this smallest of Corsair's all-in-one liquid coolers at its quiet mode. The fans are the RPMs of the fans are so low at that point. It defaults to, I think, only 300 RPM idle, and then it moves very gradually up. So it kind of overtakes the capacity of the loop very quickly, just because the pump is spinning at a very low RPM as well. It's like 1900, I think. And it jumps up. It went to like 2250 in the balance mode, and then up to, I want to say, the 2600s or something like that in the extreme mode. But the fan profile was radically different, even just moving up to balance. I felt like balanced, shockingly, had the best mix of performance and noise. So they tuned it well. I would just caution against using the quiet profile unless you have a lower power CPU, like a 3700X or something like that, where you're just going for low noise. And I will say the pump noise from this was very, very low. When I was doing noise readings, I have this sound pressure meter only 12 inches away from, I actually measured 12 inches from a space between the pump and the fans to try to get an accurate.
So you added an extra inch or two.
Yeah, I mean, it's somewhere in there. It's inexact science. We're within the 12 to 14 inch range. But in the quiet mode, it was the noise of the pump was the only noise you could hear. It was 32.3 decibels is what I got. Granted, I don't have the world's most expensive device. This is not some multi-$1,000 calibrated instrument. It's like $100 SPL meter, but 32.3, which did not change under load, because that was, I mean, the fans were below 30 decibels at this point. And then moving it up to even the extreme mode, that was, where was it? Like, it was under 38 decibels under full load and 33.8 at idle. So it's still very quiet. Like the Hyper 212 RGB Black Edition, which is a lot quieter than the original Hyper 212. That's ultra popular, obviously cooler. That lives in around the 45 dBA range. Just to give people an idea, because a lot of people have either used one of these or built a system with one. That's not a very loud cooler. And even that 45 decibel noise under full load, it's not obnoxious. It's just kind of air noise. There's no whine to it. And this is significantly quieter than that. So of course, the exception to the larger air coolers being a better option for noise is unfortunately Corsair's own. The A500 is the loudest air cooler I've ever tested. And of course, that isn't saying much because I haven't been doing this that long. Back in the day, you get yourself one of those giant thermal take coolers for your Athlon and overclock it, and you've probably got like 60 dBs or more coming from your system. But they did, basically with this launch, I think that they have sort of brought all-in-one liquid cooling back to that like premium. Like if you're looking at a high-end CPU, I have had the feeling anyway for the last few years that large tower air coolers had kind of supplanted liquid coolers unless you were willing to spend a lot more or had the room for a very large one, where a 240 millimeter all-in-one liquid cooler just, it didn't have enough of a performance advantage to justify the expense over something like a $79 or $89 tower cooler. I don't know how you guys feel about it. Like Josh, you had a great deal on that Cooler Master 240 unit, right? Like $80 or so.
Yeah.
But those probably don't outperform like the Dark Rock Pro 4. I don't think. It really depends on your circumstances, but it's nice to see a liquid cooler actually providing better performance than you can get with a large air cooler is what I'm trying to say. So
Yeah. Something to possibly do next time you do one of these is try a Ryzen 3000, because again, I've worked on adjusting the fan profiles in the motherboard and the software to get it so it's lower, but again, those hot spots get up there and it ramps up the fan. And so if you get the average Ryzen user, they're like, yeah, I hear my fan going up and down all the time. And so it'd be really interesting to see a variety of coolers that you could test on a 3600X or a 3800X or a 3900X and see how those actually react in terms of, audible content, because you've got an amount of thermal density of cooling in these things that should be able to handle these hotspots where it'll do it good enough that the motherboard won't react to it. But it's going to be really interesting to see. So if there was one thing that annoyed me of the Ryzen 3000 series, it is the fan that comes with them. And even the Wraith, it's a pretty good air cooler, but you get this, when you're just doing desktop stuff, it's really bizarre. And so, submitted for your approval.
Thank you. I will say my tip for anyone using the stock cooler, just set it to 100%. Full time. You'll get used to the noise. It'll just become part of the background, and then you don't have to listen to that annoying spooling up and down and up and down.
Orange earplugs are really inexpensive, but your cooling's going to be awesome.
And they work.
That stock cooler is not that loud at 100%. But, I have zero complaints about this at all. The only issue I had was that quiet profile. I think if they were to tune the fan profile, I think by default to be a little bit more aggressive under load, it would offer a lot better performance. But that delta temp, the only reason I knocked it down to a gold, because I think this is a good value for what it is mainly because that 82.4 delta was actually like the thermal limit of the CPU. It was 9,900 degrees under load. But it's a very tough
significantly
CPU.
Cheaper. than the Fractal we were talking about before, and it also has a 5-year warranty.
Interesting. I actually forgot about the warranty length on this because I'm so used to the.
No, I
the
just checked
2 year
because it mentioned it earlier, and yeah,
Interesting.
so
Nice.
that does
Hey. Yeah,
a little more
5
compelling.
years. So yeah, this is the iCUE H100i RGB PRO XT. So like with their keyboard, when they upgraded their K95 keyboard recently, that was the XT. So that seems to be their new branding for the next gen stuff that they come out with.
And for audio listeners, with Corsair iCUE is ICUE.
Oh, not yes, sorry. Not iCUE, iCUE.
All right, so
well
check
done,
that.
Josh. Well done. And you'd know what I was talking about if you watched us live.
I don't know what you're talking about, and I'm participating live.
Gold, Jerry. It's gold.
Oh, Seinfeld?
Not exactly.
Gold, Jerry, it's gold.
Different Jerry.
Okay, well, I mean,
Gold, Jerry.
somebody's got to understand the references. And
Three out of 5
You
understand the
young
reference.
kids.
That's a majority.
God damn.
Okay, well, all right. So thanks, Sebastian, for those 2 reviews, and you can find the
Yeah,
full
no problem.
reviews at pcper.com. All right, so let's get our picks of the week done. I'll start off first. Continuing on from what I mentioned a couple weeks ago about trying to support your local businesses and small businesses in your area during these tough economic times. Something to look out for that they've done here in Cincinnati, and I'm sure is being done elsewhere, is they've recommended gift cards. So you can't go to a certain restaurant or shop, but go, and a lot of them are offering gift cards. So they can get some cash flow now to keep paying their rent and stuff. And then obviously once this is over, hopefully you can go and use them. Now, people have argued the stores, they might go under depending on how long this lasts. And that's certainly a concern, but we all got to do what we got to do to help each other during this time. And in Cincinnati, the one thing that they did here is the local business, one of the local business consortiums did a program where they offered to match any gift card at a select retailer. So if you bought a gift card for $25, they'd send you an additional $25 gift card. And it was a very successful program. They actually ran out of the allocated funds like within hours, but they're looking to replenish it. So check for something like this in your area, and again, check for any way you can help if you can, because like I said, obviously some people have lost their jobs. They don't have income coming in. There's no expectation for you there, but if you're able, please do. And as one commenter pointed out, as I said on the last show, he said, wait a minute. So what I'm hearing is I can sit in my pajamas and order a pizza and I'm doing good for the community. And I said, yes, you are. So
Finally.
yeah.
Yes.
All right. But next up, Jeremy, you've got something for us.
Yay. Well, honestly, it is a pick of desperation, but then I realized, hey, I don't have this and I should buy it. And there's an extra $10 off the second that you buy an Origin game on Epic. You know, that thing that I told you shouldn't get because we don't need more gaming platforms, but yet keeps getting, decent initial releases. Well, Pro Exodus is a little bit old.
Free games away every week.
Constantly.
And they're good games.
Yes.
Those bastards giving free things away.
So I played one of the Metro games. I think I own the second one, but I've never actually played it. But Metro Exodus gets a lot better reviews because it's a little bit more of a playground, and it's... I mean, I don't want to say they put more effort into it than the previous games, just that from the reviews and what I've been hearing talked about, they were more successful with the sort of feeling of this game. And so, yeah, right now, even the gold one is about $22, and there's a $10 gift card on the first one that you buy on the Epic Store right now. They're having a sale. And so I think it was... Yeah, sorry, the gold was $29. Yeah, but there's a $10 off immediately, so it's $20. You got another 8 days to grab it, so don't worry that you had to be watching it tonight to get it. And if you don't want the gold, well, $20 for the other one with an instant $10 off isn't too bad either.
All right, great. So that's Metro Exodus on sale at the Epic Games Store.
It's like
I just want to
Drawful
reiterate,
and something else right now.
there's no shame in keeping your games library flush with games that you have just yet to get to. That's okay.
Yeah.
Make sure that everybody's
that's
okay
it.
with that.
This
I
is
realize
been
you
the
were alluding
story
to
of
that.
my life for the last 4 weeks. I bought Skyrim in 2011, and only
I've seen you
3
playing
weeks ago did I start playing it.
And
It's
good.
great. I'm enjoying it.
There you go.
I want to get off this
okay.
podcast so we can play more and drink beer.
All right. Well, then, Josh, you tell us your pick for this week.
What is my
Is it
pick?
Skyrim?
Chair wheels?
Is it beer?
Not
Skyrim?
Skyrim. Yeah,
Sky
no,
chairs?
my wife, if you look back here, you'll see the chair that is by itself in the corner.
Number
And
3?
it seems that my wife sat down rather hard on this chair, which otherwise, the build quality is pretty good, but the wheel quality is not great. And she broke a wheel off of it, and of course it tilted rather dramatically, and there was much screaming and yelling and hysterics. And mainly from me, because, I don't want her getting hurt because we have high deductibles. But anyway, yeah, these wheels are a lot more solid, smoother flowing. I mean, it's $30. Well, okay, currently unavailable, but it was available, and it's being shipped to me. But yeah, like
You
a
bought them
roller
out of the
wheel.
wheels? Rollerblade wheels.
Yeah.
Hey, those are some of the hardest
They
core
work
wheels I've
better,
ever
they
seen.
rotate faster, they're smoother, they're larger. They don't collect hair nearly as much as the standard wheels that a lot of the less expensive gaming chairs and other chairs have. So it's a nice upgrade. It really is. And unfortunately, apparently a couple of other people thought the same thing and bought them all up in this time of need.
They're amazing. I can say firsthand. You glide around. Doesn't matter if it's carpet or hardwood flooring, and they're not like a hard plastic, right? Like you don't have them yet, but it's almost like a hard.
No, it's
gel.
like rollerblade wheel.
So
I
you
mean,
get-
it's
yeah,
that
you
it's
get
that
a
it's
grip
that hard rubber.
on the floor.
Yeah.
I mean,
And they're much
the ad
easier to
literally
clean.
says, zoom, 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 make your chair go vroom, vroom with these super slick and super cool rollerblade style casters. So,
Unfortunately for me, my son decided my chair was the coolest toy in the house. So then he was flinging himself across the room with it. He was going through the whole downstairs of our house in the chair. Ended up having an issue with the chair one day because he loved being in it so much. He had an accident in the chair, and I had to throw the chair away. I saved the wheels. I have yet to replace the chair. So now I have these beautiful wheels just sitting here. Josh, if I'd known, I could have donated them to you.
You could have,
But
but it's
I
fine.
could have.
I'll take the $27 hit because your shipping it would have been at least half that.
Or more, yeah. If I'd done like
Yeah.
UPS, it'd been about $20. So yeah.
Okay, so Sebastian didn't have a pick this week because he's difficult.
Because I'm lame.
Yeah.
No.
And Firefox has continued to crash on me here, so I'm switched to Classic Edge where I can show Brett's pick.
God.
So tell us what
Hey,
you got.
so if you don't have a water jet in your garage and you don't have a CNC or anything like that, or you aren't fully equipped with high intensity lasers in your basement, you can send your needs over to these guys, and they will cut your design out of metal. And intricate stuff, they'll cut it out of brass, they'll cut it out of stainless steel, they'll cut it out of aluminum, they'll cut it out of different kinds of iron.
Is
It
their catchphrase "I'll cut you"?
It should be, and maybe
It
we
really
should write
should.
that down and send it over, because when you can't do this stuff at home, you should be able to exchange money to have someone else do it. You know what I mean? So I had a companion to this, and it just to bring it back around to the PC space, which was, what would you maybe want to be able to build out of this? One of my other favorite places to go for just cool things that I also want to put in my to build library someday is Instructables. So this guy built this, had this frame, and the design for it is in here. EPS files, I believe, or AI files is in here to build a portable ITX frame. And have the send cut send guys build it out, and it is a cool portable ITX open air, not a test bench frame, but it's it's one of those new sort of everybody's doing it kind of thing.
That's like
with an
Maury
open air.
style cooler.
Yeah. I would. I'm not sure that you could get an AIO type thing on this. Maybe you put the radiator around the back side, but of course the frame comes back flat and open, so you can drill and tap any holes anywhere you want for anything that you want. This guy in particular made a mounting bracket for the SSD and a 3D printer, but SSD brackets are a dime a dozen. You can just buy those off of eBay or get them from Fantex or whoever, and you can just mount that to the backside edge. But I thought it was cool, so I got this on my Instructable, and I went, "Wow, that's pretty neat." And then I traced back, where did he get that piece of aluminum made? And that's when I came up with the send cut send guys. So that's my suggestion to go check out when you don't have a water jet in your garage, or like I said, high intensity lasers or a CNC. Get it done.
And can you cut me something to sit between that giant Noctua heatsink and the graphics card so I can actually cool the back?
Oh my
of the
gosh!
card?
If you can make it in
because
Photoshop, you can have
you've got that much space. Why the hell not?
Yeah. Why? Yeah. Have it made out of aluminum or arrows. Actually, these guys will actually cut aerospace. I believe they legitimately say in that send cut send.
Well, carbon fiber is an insulator, isn't it?
Well, it's aerospace quality aluminium, if I pronounce it in the English.
Thank you.
Spec. Yep. Yeah. Where there it is, aluminum aerospace. I'm not sure I could hit the quite right Johnny Ive aspect of this.
Precipitation
Aerospace
hardened
aluminium. Yeah, but they'll cut it with whatever it is that they do with their magic
steel.
Or
They have
hot rolled
hot
carbon
rolled
steel,
that Core 10 weathered look
pickled
for that
and oil.
Well, that's set, send, cut, send. And we'll have links to that and all the other picks of the week, as long as any other references and stories that we mentioned today. We'll have those all in the show notes at pcper.com/podcast. So with that, folks, we're gonna sign off today. Thank you all so much for joining us. It is hot in here with that air conditioner not working. It's about 87 degrees right now, and I'm a large man, so I already have plenty of natural insulation, and
But you're not disgusting.
No, you're not.
No, I am.
You're not
Is
disgusting.
there also a
We're
hot laptop on your legs right now, Jim? Because
No, there's
that's
not.
helping anything.
But there's an RTX card in this workstation here that's rendering all these videos I'm recording. So
You should be having that free air, Jim. That should all be just free air, no case. Just be open air.
maybe
Hung out the window in the rain.
I'll say I gotta get Sebastian to send me that 3970 so I can.
Yeah, it's
upgrade
pretty much
to
ready to go right here. I'll just put it in the motherboard box and just put a sticker on the outside of it. I'm sure that'll be fine.
Just fine.
And you'll get
Attach
it eventually.
those wheels to it and push it away.
Yeah, fourth class mail, if that still exists.
But thanks, everyone. We appreciate you joining us live here. I did want to mention we got a Patreon donation over the week here. I think it was on Friday.
Yay.
And it's from his name is a string of about 50 digits. So
So you got it in Bitcoin?
yeah, so I don't think I can read that, but his message was actually that's the wrong email. Where's his message?
Whoops.
It says, "Rest in peace, Ryan. Rest in peace, Alan. Josh, please keep bringing the awesome." And this is where I get confused. "Jim, please keep knocking up that cat." I don't get it. Josh, I think gets it. I don't know what that means.
That's good though.
But thank you. Yes, thank you for joining Patreon and supporting us. And thanks to all of our Patreon folks. And as I said in the last episode too, I understand if you're facing a tough time financially and you got to stop. I've received, I really appreciate it, but it's not necessary. I've received a couple emails of people saying that they were sorry they had to stop, but totally understand. Obviously, in the scheme of things, we are nothing. And all we hope is to provide you a little bit of entertainment and knowledge each week. So glad you could join us. Please continue to stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you next week.